One of the most frequent questions I get asked in my classes is there a way of becoming fluent without just relying on school style courses or without moving to another country or traveling extensively? These are kind of the two extremes, right? I mean, immersion in a new country, speaking to fluent speakers only, that is something that works, yes. And the other extreme, sitting in a school style environment, studying based on a textbook, explaining grammar, is the other extreme of learning the system of the language, only that doesn't necessarily make you fluent. Is there something in between, something that you can actually, well, I call it effortless fluency, a way in which you activate your brain in a natural way, in a similar way that actually children learn their first language? So, hi, for those of you who are new to this channel, I'm Dr. Alex. I'm a social psychologist. I bring you the fundamental facts about social and brain psychology that you need to know to structure and systematize your learning in such a way that it becomes effortless, joyful, and that it becomes so much more effective. To look at today, I'm going to share with you the two strongest reinforcers of fluency. I'm going to explain the neurological and the social psychological reasons behind it. And also, and this is why you need to absolutely watch this until the end, I'm going to explain why knowing this helps you also with the fear of speaking, because this is something that you need to know that goes on in your brain if you're afraid of something. And for those of you who haven't yet, please make sure to download your copy of Everyday Nano, the 7 Steps to Fluency. And also, oh yes, I have online now my 10-page guide that helps you to establish your perfect study routine. Get that? It actually kind of summarizes the best gems of what I share on this channel so that you can, in your own time, create that effective study routine that works for you. Okay, here it is. Number one, the first psychological fact or neurological brain psychology fact is that you actually need repetition and several ways of not knowing something to create new brain structures. What actually happens, and this is so fascinating, when you are learning or when you're becoming fluent in a new language, you are rewiring your brain. I will actually, as always, leave scientific references for this in the description. So the rewiring of the brain is you structure your thinking in a new in new patterns to actually recognize meaningful patterns in an kind of everyday sense-making process that goes on in your brain. And so you're completely opening in your brain a new register for recognizing meaningful patterns. So whereas before you were able to recognize if somebody asks you how you are or if you're well only in one language, your brain creates a new register for the same pattern, but in a completely different way of thinking, which is the new language. And so for that, to structure this or to rewire your brain in that new pattern, you need to give your brain time, and many repetitions is the key. Many repetitions. This is why smaller every day, but consistently every day is better. This is why my approach Everyday Nano is so powerful, because you feel I'm not actually doing something. I mean, you might feel that, but actually it's so powerful because you're doing something a lot over the course of the year, if you know what I mean. So let me rephrase that because I feel I haven't been clear here. What it means, you might feel at the beginning, this is not enough because we have this kind of myth about language learning that you need to study really hard. I mentioned that in my previous videos. People usually come to me and say, I just can't find the time. And I'm like, for what? What do you think you need to be doing? And this is exactly, and let's go back to the intro when I said the school style studying. We have this myth about language learning that it's something almost scientific. You need to sit there with a book for hours. And You don't need to. I mean, when I realized that after studying my third language, Spanish, uh, I was so liberated and freed up that actually it doesn't require sit there with a book for hours. You need to sit there with a book, yes, but only if you look up something that interests you for your real life because you want to resolve a communicative situation. And that's the second factor. So the first one was in order to rewire your brain, you need to have constant small chunks of repetition. So that's the everyday part. And the small part, nano. And the second big scientific fact is you need to have real social interaction. And this is where usually the argument that I said at the beginning, the other extreme kicks in when people say, yeah, but I can't just move to another country, I have my life here. Or I can't just afford to travel extensively and it's not enough. Usually people kind of oscillate between these two extremes. They say either, oh, it's so much work to study and all this homework and this textbook, it's just too much. And then when I say, okay, just study, maybe think about doing everyday nano situations in your real life, they are like, okay, but I haven't got anyone to talk to. I can't travel, and I won't actually move to a country that speaks the language. You don't need to even, and that's the second big fact. You achieve huge liberation also if you realize that you don't need any of these things. Your brain, in order to memorize faster, needs, apart from the repetition that I just outlined, it needs real life intention to communicate. So if you want to say something in the new language, this can just accelerate so much your fluency. So what helps here is to basically take whatever you live in your everyday life. So you just commuted to your workplace and you bumped into somebody you know, or maybe you talked to a colleague. That conversation that you had, maybe just the beginning of that conversation, think what would you have said in your own style in the new language, and then translate that, or basically look up the sentence, what you could say in the new language, and memorize that. And also normalize the next day. You won't be able to recall it the next day. You need to then repeat it. That's why I said in one of my previous videos, I sometimes stick to one sentence for 1 week and repeat it every day until I realize, it's becoming familiar. Because what your brain needs is, in order to normalize that new connection that you created, you need to repeat it. It's the same like anything you do and that you find you have experience in, you need to repeat it several times. And that leads us to the third point that I want to share today, which is why this helps also, why knowing this, how your social memory and your brain memory works, why this helps you with the fear of speaking with fluent speakers. I mean, we all know this situation. I had this a lot. When I started out with English, I had it a lot actually. Whenever I started to speak to fluent speaker, I basically turned red. That was my response. I was so fearful. I was like, I just sound ridiculous. So what basically happens in your body and in your brain when you speak to a fluent speaker? You have that fear of speaking because you have identity loss. You lose your character. You can't express yourself with your normal funny self, with your normal humor, with your normal way of being, with your little chip-in sentences that you say to actually manifest your adult identity. And this is nothing negative. I'm not saying that this is bad, but we all have this ego in our mother tongue. So we want to express that as well in the new language. We can't. So we rather freeze because we feel embarrassed to make a fool of ourselves in front of others. Now, the key is what I just said, this repeating something in real social interactions at least 10 times, let's say, that actually signals to your brain it's not a threat, it's something normal. So you normalize new stuff that you're fearful of by repeating it. And repeating can be as funny as I mentioned that in previous videos, talking to your dog or talking to anyone you know who is already fluent, using some of these wonderful new platforms that enable you to speak for half an hour to a native speaker, or even, and I did a video on that, speaking to one of these artificial intelligence agents, so for example, ChatGPT, in the new language. It just normalizes it speaking in that new language. And by knowing that actually something that you're fearful of today in the future might not even be perceived as a threat, is when you know that you can work with that and you can normalize it today. Like me, for example, I can say I feel quite embarrassed speaking Italian because I'm not that fluent. I don't come across as the expert as I like to be normally. And I kind of make a fool out of myself. Okay, if I know that today, that's fine. It's okay. I know it's fine. But in the future, I won't be. So by knowing that, you program your brain with the repetitions and with this kind of simulating everyday interactions, meaningful conversations, you teach your brain to learn. And this is one of the most powerful skills you can actually acquire, because it's the skill number one. It's learning how to learn. It's learning how to focus on a small chunk of new social interaction and sticking with that and doing that consistently. This is so powerful. You will, I mean, if you just do the math as well, if you do that every day for a whole year, you will go from absolute beginner to kind of false beginner or even beginning to be intermediate in just 1 year. And that is fantastic. I usually now, using this new method, Everyday Nano, I need more or less 2 years to activate a new language, which is more or less what a baby needs. So if you have children, you will know that they start to speak in the mother tongue more or less at the end of the second year, or let's say throughout the second year of their life, because obviously there's differences. Everyone is different. Like, we as human beings are unique, so you can't generalize, but you obviously don't need something like 10 years, which I unfortunately had with my first foreign language. You don't need that. You can activate fluency far faster. And I hear you might say, yeah, but there's differences as well if you study similar languages or languages that have a complete different structure. Yes, of course. If you enter in a new language system like me now, if I go from Latin languages into Chinese, or obviously I will need a bit longer. I appreciate that. But I'm just saying we need to get away from these myths about what is the perceived wisdom of how studying a language should look like. And the two extremes, as I outlined, definitely don't have justification on their own. That is my point. So please, my dear language learners, leave me a comment. What do you think about this, and how does that work for you? I am creating a community here. We need to support each other. Let's use YouTube as a platform to supporting each other, and also to share those tips and tricks and how we go about studying languages, because it's all about that. We only have one life, so let's make that as joyful and as enjoyable as possible. And as always, thanks for watching and spending that moment with me. See you in the next video.